But first, let's talk about what you guys see for when you know he's at his best, when you know he's kind of in that green zone.
Mm-hmm. So he's relaxed. He doesn't get upset easily.
Mm-hmm.
He transitions better. He is engaging, and he'll engage others. Not kids, but he'll, engage adults.
Mm-hmm.
Not just Jason and I, but others too. He will jabber and talk.
Yeah, I was going to say that was when he's kind of doing the blah, 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 he's kind of in his comfort zone.
He's really quick to respond or answer when you ask or suggest, let's go do this, and he hops up and goes and does it, or we should try this, and he's real quick to respond when he's in that green zone.
Yeah, I think all of those are really great pieces. And then kind of, how do you typically see his body moving? This might be a little bit of a harder one, but when I notice when he's climbing over things easily, when he's coordinated and doing things, he tends to be more just right. I talked about a little bit today, when those kids came in and his arousal increases and he starts slipping on the ladder, and he's, might dive headfirst out of the ball pit and all these things where you're like, whoa, that's, so sort of that, controlled body movements.
Yeah, I was going to say sometimes when he starts getting into the orange or yellow, he will make jerky or very large, uncontrolled movements, but when he's sitting in green, he can play well. He isn't, if he's running around, it's not unpurposeful. He's having, I guess, purposeful body movements.
Yeah, so definitely I think that falls into the yellow when he kind of has those pieces. And the reason I think it's, really good that we look at all of these, because when he's in the green zone, you can probably say, all right, it's time to get in the car, let's go. And you can do that. But when he's in the yellow zone, whether it's because he's having so much fun and he's kind of doing those sort of silly, uncontrolled laughing, where he starts laughing so hard that he can't really control what he's doing, there isn't any good or bad zones, so to speak. It's just changing the behavior. So we're all in the yellow during certain times, and there's certain times that it's really appropriate, but that we still have to grade what we do. So when he really likes it and he's excited and he's really engaged, that's when he's needs a couple more prompts before we leave versus the all right, we can go get in the car. And so it's probably why it's kind of confusing for you guys, because it's yesterday when it was time to leave for school and I just said, all right, let's go get in the car, it was fine. But now today, it's a meltdown, and it's probably because where he's starting from is different. So the yellow, we talked about the large, jerky, uncontrolled movements. What else do you guys see in yellow?
He will cry more, gets more upset. No to everything. What else do we see in yellow? What's he doing? What's his body doing? He'll move from thing to thing to thing to thing quickly, the attention span.
Yeah, that's one of the pieces I definitely see. The yellow crying, I think, is more like what we saw today, where it's not, it's kind of he tells you once without crying, and then, you would tell him no, and then he starts to escalate a little bit more, but that he can still be brought back down. There's kind of different grades of crying, than the orange crying is more the first time you say it, he's already crying and not recovering. I think that more falls under that kind of orange crying. So what else did we want to do? Oh, I haven't really seen him do a lot of the no in our sessions, so I'm not sure what that falls under.
Yeah.
And it was interesting because today it was like when I was trying to get him to use it to communicate with me what he wanted, and he was, I mean, he did after I modeled it, but he didn't just.
Yeah.
Have you seen the no to everything?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Do you think he's in the yellow? Do you think he's knowing no because he's
Yellow or orange, I'm not sure.
unregulated, or is it just because he doesn't want to and he's 3 and he's going to tell us no?
Oh, no, I
I
think
have a hard time determining what the purpose of the action is. Is it because
I think it's more because he's unregulated,
You do?
because I think in general he's not a
no?
child.
Well, like getting dressed. Lately, it's not been very easy, and I'll see what I think is the green zone, and he'll still refuse to get dressed. So I'll give him choices. Hey, the blue shirt or the red shirt. The green pants or the yellow pants, or something like that, which typically had worked in the past, is not working as well anymore.
And did you guys try changing up what the choices were? Like,
Sometimes it's like, well, come pick out what you want. Just come pick a shirt, and sometimes he'll even come over and look through and then just either throw everything out or just no.
And have you done any of like, oh, are we going to put your pants on first or your shirt on first, or any of the choices?
I don't know if I've done that one. I've asked, like, do you want to get dressed in here or in here? On the bed or on the floor? So I've tried.
Yeah.
And sometimes it works.
And sometimes
Right
he'll
now.
say bed and he'll crawl up on the bed
And
and
then
then not want to get dressed.
Yeah.
So it looks like cooperation's happening and then it doesn't. Trying to think.
Okay, well, and that might be something that, especially since you guys have that camera, like if one of you videos
Okay.
the getting dressed piece, then I can watch it and kind of be like,
Okay.
oh, like, this is what I'm seeing based on the sensory pieces.
You can keep talking. I do have a video I wanted to show you of. One of the things I really struggle with is at night time when he's not wanting to do like everything's a no, like especially in the middle of the night that we got up at 2 o'clock in the morning, he just was having none of options, he was having none of anything. And this was not that time, but this is exactly what happens. And he would definitely in the orange to red zone, just crashing, and I have to say his hitting has decreased. And the power in which he hits has decreased. Don't you think?
So he'll be up doing that, and if you just left him, he would be upset, or he would.
Yes, like, while Jason was gone, this was just kind of all over the place, but he'll start to, like, he'll just scream to the point where I can't do anything. So I leave him in his crib and I leave. And I let him just scream his head off for like 2 or 3 minutes. Then when I go back in there, it's easier to work with him, calm him. I pick him up and hold him, and he'll rest his head on my shoulder. No more hitting and that type of thing. It's like I just have to let him melt down.
Yeah.
And then I can engage him again. But at the point where it's, I don't want to be in the crib, I don't want to be out, I don't want to sit on the bed, I don't want you to hold me, I don't, and it's.
But so where does this fall within that? Like,
This happened after all of that meltdown.
Okay.
So the meltdown happened, and then this was him coming down from the meltdown in order to
go back
to sleep.
Yeah. So I would like to see the. So we know red is hitting. The screaming, inconsolable. What I'm kind of interested in is how much time you have from, so the strategies of the choices might work in the yellow because you kind of have a long, you have, let's say 3 minutes of yellow before it turns into red or orange. But in the orange, you might only have 30 seconds of orange before it goes to red. So the choices aren't going to work in orange because the choices take longer than 30 seconds. And part of what I'm thinking is that how we talked about those sensory inputs that are organizing. So it's that that in the orange, I'm thinking what's going to work better for him is when you hold him, you might do that slow rocking and then just the so you drop your verbal, you're hardly using any words at all. And it might just be, it's okay, and then when you see him kind of relax or come back to yellow, then you could put in the limits again, but it's kind of like a dance, right? So you're like, oh, now we're into the orange, okay. I'm dropping down my language, I'm just giving him that firm input pressure. Have you guys ever used weighted blankets or anything with him?
He does have a weighted blanket.
Does he like it? Yeah, I could imagine that he would. So part of what we know, another thing that's organized, so when he's doing that where he's sticking his head into the ground and going up like that, part of the reason that is organizing for kids is because anytime you have your head below your heart, it activates the parasympathetic nervous system. So it activates that rest and digest piece. So that's why they tell you when, like, I don't know if you've ever seen this, but like if somebody breaks their arm or something like that, and they have them sit and put their head between their legs, and it's like, get your head below your heart because you don't want them to pass out because their fight or flight system is like
on overload.
Yeah, like, okay, you broke a bone, this is serious. So that you're putting the head below the heart to try to do that. Same kind of thing of like, if you're feeling faint or anything like that, where they have you do that because it activates, it dilates all those blood vessels. It says, okay, everything, you can relax. You don't need to cut off all of your circulation and just send it to your heart because we're running away from that bear or whatever. So that would be another sign to me that, in that video, like you're saying, he's coming back down, like he's probably in orange in that video. And so when you see him doing those kind of things, that might be another sign that it's becoming that he's in that orange place. But I think so the strategies for yellow, for the adults, are the validation with the choices, the smaller visual space, like, so part of what I think is helpful about the ball pit for him is it's like a visually contained space. Like, this is my area. So you can either do that with your body. So I don't know if it happens much when you're out somewhere, or
every once in a while.
Yeah, I mean, I guess even at home too. So it's like you're maybe in the large playroom telling him that it's time to go to school or whatever, and he's having a hard time. You might make it so that your body is between him and everything. So if like you're in the corner of the room or something like that, you can kind of get down on his level, face him away from kind of all the distracting visual of his toys and stuff like that, and then do the, I know you want to keep playing in here, or I know you don't want to go to school or whatever it is, then it's time to go. But making that smaller visual space, getting down on his level can be really helpful. I'm still wanting to use less words in yellow than you're probably, because I think often what happens for parents is when the kid starts to get into yellow, the parent starts to go into yellow or orange, and when we as adults, when we're in that state, tend to talk more, talk faster, talk louder, when what we really need to be doing to help pull him back down into green is talking quieter, fewer words. You know, those kind of first then statements can be helpful. So those are the things that I think will work for yellow. Is there anything else that you guys have found in yellow that is helpful?
Depending what it is, sometimes if you just completely change what's going on, change what you're doing, completely change the task.
So distraction or redirection. Yep, so that's a perfect strategy for yellow. And that kind of goes along with the silly piece that we talked about as a strategy for that area.
I did that, I tried that yesterday or the day before, the silly thing, and it worked. Or, you know, and it worked well. It's hard to be silly when things are escalating, but that kind of brings it back down to,
yeah. Especially for like, if it's because he's bonked himself or because he's, you know, done something like that, like if you go and do it, so it's like he was sitting in the chair and he bonked his thing on the head and you're like, oh, ow, that looks like it hurt, let me see, and then you go and bonk your head, you're like, oh yeah, ow, that does hurt, you know, then he can, you're sort of sharing in that experience with him. You're saying like, I get what's going on, and you're helping him make meaning of it because you're showing him this is what your body did.
Yesterday, the bus hit him and then you kind of reenacted it, and I was wondering, is that so that he can process what caused that? Yeah,
so kids that don't have that good body awareness, often those kinds of things feel like random assaults out of nowhere. So if you can sort of break it down for them, that can be helpful for what's happening. So I think we've talked about a lot of the pieces for yellow. For orange, what do you guys, we talked about the crying, we talked about, what else did we have in orange? Oh, where do you guys think when he runs and jumps onto you? So it happened to you today after the scooter board. It was happening to you a lot yesterday when we were in that small gym.
I think it's probably yellow.
Yeah. Do you think it's more because he's not unhappy? I always think of, I guess.
I didn't even realize it was even a sign of escalation until you talked about it yesterday, and I was like, yeah, I guess that makes sense that it is.
Yeah, so I think that falls in the yellow piece.
Before yesterday, I would have just said, I don't know, it's just green, he's just playing, but you know, now,
yeah,
now I realize,
but I think
no, it's not.
Yeah, and I think, you know, if you guys get a chance to watch the video too, you can see like the game is really exciting, we're crashing, you know, and then it's like it becomes a little bit too much and I need Dad to kind of help me come back down. So he goes and like crashes into him, sits on his lap, and so I think that's a
So is he doing that to regulate himself?
Yeah, it's not very effective, you know, or he's like, he kind of looks at you and throws it like, I'm trying to tell you I'm mad. I think that's more in the orange.
I think maybe in orange, he changes his mind a lot. Like, all done, want more, all done, want more. So it continually is changing very quickly,
Mhm.
because he's just not happy, and so he thinks, I'll be happy with this. Oh, no, I'm not happy with this. I'll be happy with this. So it's real fast changing of mind.
Mhm. Yeah, and it looks a little bit different than the yellow where he's jumping from activity to activity, but he seems to be engaging in it and have
Yeah.
fun. And then he's like, oh, no, I'm not to this with the orange where it's like, he doesn't, you're trying to ask him like, oh, are we doing more? And he's like, yes, and then you start doing it, and then he gets really mad, and then you're like, okay, so we're not doing it anymore, and you start to put it away, and then he's like, no, and then he gets really mad, and you're like, okay. So yeah, so there's, you know, it might sound similar, like the jumping between activity and changing his mind, but one is kind of the yellow and one is
Yeah.
sort of that orange piece.
At some points, it's like he just doesn't respond.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you'll ask him, and maybe that's because he's in orange and can't respond, but he becomes less responsive to what you are trying to get him to do or say, or it's just like, are you there?
Yeah, and that's perfect, because you had said in green, he responds really quickly. You know, you're like,
Yeah.
let's play this. So it definitely makes sense that in orange that would be there. I mean, we had kind of the jabbering in the green and the orange. I think he loses the language and the sound. I mean, he probably doesn't have the more or the no anymore.
Yeah.
you know, in yellow when he's saying no to everything, or he's saying go, or he's saying all done, or you know, those kind of things. But in the orange, he's not even communicating with you often at that level, I think. So
Maybe it's orange, I don't know, maybe yellow, sweeping of things off of tables.
Oh, it's definitely not yellow. I say it's
You think
definitely
it's orange?
orange or into red almost.
It just, like, he'll just clear a table. And sometimes he'll do it and I didn't even know that he, you know, it's like my first cue that something's going on. It might just be because he's operating in yellow right then a lot, and then this kind of shows me that it's escalating. But, I mean, just clearing tables and that type of thing with his arms. And won't stop. Like, you can't, okay, what's going on? Put it back. You know. So do you think that's orange?
yeah. I think if it was yellow, you would be able to have sort of a conversation about it, right? It would be like, oh, you don't want to play that anymore, or you know, and you could sort of communicate those pieces to you. But I think too, we might get that response less when we read his yellow cues more, and then we can kind of be like, oh, we almost done with this game? You want to clean it up? Okay. And putting it in there. So I think, yeah, I think that's a part of the orange. So I think some of the strategies for yellow that will also work for orange are those big squeezes. So giving him that intense input. The deep breath, I think, is another one too. So like when he's, you know, like if you yourself just sort of go, and you like show that and model that to him, you know, it's kind of like, oh wow, I was getting a lot. And so without as many words, you know, you can helps you down regulate also, but it also is modeling for him like this is what you can do in this moment. And then one of the things I'm trying to think about is how the demands are different between what you do for all of them. So, because part of what you were asking me was like, how do you know when to set a limit? So yellow is definitely a place. Green, you can set a lot of limits, right? He's regulated. Just by setting the limit, you might put him into yellow. But within yellow,
Mhm.
I think he manages limits pretty well. Especially if you use the kind of, yep, I know what you're trying to say, bud, but that's not what's gonna happen.
Mhm.
If you reassure him that kind of whatever his worst fear is isn't gonna happen, you know, we're not gonna have to play with the kids, they're not gonna take your bunnies, they're not gonna, you know, whatever it is, that we can kind of see that response happen where he's kind of like, where's this gonna go? So I think we can definitely do the limits in there. In the orange, so I'm thinking about in the messy room,
Mhm.
one of the ways that we graded it was that mom can do it with you.
Mhm.
So in the yellow, he can probably be doing whatever it is, mostly, you know, by himself. But having you like, oh, you know, we can do it together, and so that might even be hand over hand kind of piece that might be like with the truck where it just happened to fall into the thing even though he wasn't trying to, like, then we're like, yay, great, you did it, even though he wasn't actually trying to. So that might be something else, like you can tell he's about to throw something and he's an orange, like you move the cleanup bucket right there so it happens to get in, and then it's like, oh great, cleaning up job, you know, and you try to kind of anticipate, you make that what he's trying to do work for the limit, like you give a little bit more than you would in yellow. So in yellow, you know, he throws something off and he's still smiling at you, you know, you go, no, it goes in the bucket, you can get it off the floor and put it in the bucket, and he can do those pieces. But in orange, you make the bucket, you try to put the bucket wherever it is, close to there as possible, kind of thing. And then for the orange, you know, the same thing with the words for when you're grading when you're putting the demand on. So it's like, you know, mom can help, but it's not, oh, mom will go with you to put it in the bucket so that you can clean it up, because that's too many words. So it's that really short phrasing. And all of these are trying to avoid us getting to the red, so that's why I'm not talking about the red that much. But the red strategy is kind of like you're talking about. It's either like you just sit there and hold him and he screams it out, or you leave him in the crib and he screams it out, because there isn't really much you can do in red.
Yeah.
So that's why we try to think about all
Before
those
it gets
other
there.
cues.